Aileen Carol Wuornos, born Aileen Pittman on February 29, 1956, became one of America's most infamous serial killers. Between 1989 and 1990, while working as a street prostitute along Florida highways, Wuornos killed and robbed 7 men. She claimed each killing was an act of self-defense, asserting that the men had either raped or attempted to assault her. Despite these claims, Wuornos was convicted and sentenced to death for 6 of the murders. After over a decade on Florida's death row, she was executed by lethal injection on October 9, 2002. Her life and crimes were depicted in the 2003 film Monster, which traces her descent from her first killing to her final days on death row. Charlize Theron's chilling portrayal of Wuornos earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress, bringing an intense spotlight to this dark chapter in true crime history. Aileen Carol Wuornos, born Aileen Pittman on February 29, 1956, etched her name into the annals of American crime history as one of the country's most notorious serial killers. Over a span from 1989 to 1990, while working as a street prostitute along Florida's highways, she murdered and robbed 7 men. Wuornos maintained that each killing was an act of self-defense, claiming that her clients had either assaulted or attempted to assault her. However, these claims didn't prevent her from facing justice. Wuornos was convicted and sentenced to death for 6 of the murders. After over a decade on Florida's death row, she was executed by lethal injection on October 9, 2002. By the age of 11, Wuornos began engaging in sexual activities in school in exchange for cigarettes, drugs, and food. She had also engaged in sexual activities with her brother. Wuornos said that her alcoholic grandfather had sexually assaulted and beaten her when she was a child. Before beating her, he would force her to strip out of her clothes. In 1970, at age 14, she became pregnant after being raped by a family friend. Wuornos gave birth to a boy at a home for unwed mothers on March 23, 1971, and the child was placed for adoption. A few months after her son was born, she dropped out of school at about the same time that her grandmother died of liver failure. When Wuornos was 15, her grandfather threw her out of the house, and she began living in the woods near her old home and supported herself through prostitution. On May 27, 1974, an 18-year-old Aileen Wuornos faced her first brush with the law in Jefferson County, Colorado. She was arrested for driving under the influence, DUI, disorderly conduct, and firing a .22 caliber pistol from a moving vehicle. When she later failed to appear in court, additional charges were filed against her. In 1976, Wuornos hitchhiked to Florida, where she quickly wed 69-year-old Louis Gratz Fell, a prominent yacht club president. Their marriage made it to the society pages, but it quickly unraveled as Wuornos became embroiled in bar altercations and was even briefly jailed for assault. In one incident, she struck Fell with his own cane, prompting him to seek a restraining order just weeks into their marriage. Wuornos soon returned to Michigan, and on July 14th, she was arrested at Bernie's Club in Antrim County for assault and disturbing the peace after throwing a cue ball at a bartender. Tragedy struck days later on July 17th when her brother Keith passed away from esophageal cancer, leaving her with a $10,000 life insurance payout. Just 4 days after his death, Wuornos and Fell annulled their marriage, ending a turbulent 9-week union. In August, she was fined $105 for drunk driving and used her inheritance to settle the debt, quickly spending the remaining amount on luxuries, including a new car, which she wrecked shortly after. At age 22, in 1978, Aileen Wuornos attempted suicide by shooting herself in the stomach. This was one of 6 suicide attempts she reportedly made between the ages of 14 and 22. Her troubled life continued to spiral, and on May 20, 1981, Wuornos was arrested in Edgewater, Florida, for the armed robbery of a convenience store, stealing $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. She was sentenced to prison on May 4, 1982, and released a little over a year later on June 30, 1983. Wuornos soon returned to crime. On May 1, 1984, she was arrested for attempting to pass forged checks at a Key West bank. The following year, on November 30, 1985, she was named as a suspect in the theft of a revolver and ammunition in Pasco County. Then, on January 4, 1986, she was arrested in Miami for car theft, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice, having provided police with identification under her aunt's name. A search of the stolen vehicle uncovered a .38 caliber revolver and a box of ammunition. Later that year, on June 2nd, she was detained by Volusia County deputies when a male companion accused her of pulling a gun on him and demanding $200. She was found with spare ammunition, and a .22 pistol was discovered under the passenger seat she occupied. In 1986, Wuornos' life took a new turn when she met 24-year-old Tyria Moore, a motel maid at the Zodiac, a gay bar in Daytona Beach. The two quickly became inseparable, moving in together as Wuornos supported them through sex work. On July 4, 1987, Daytona Beach police detained both women after they were accused of assaulting someone with a beer bottle at a bar. In another incident on March 12, 1988, Wuornos accused a Daytona Beach bus driver of assault, claiming he pushed her off the bus during a confrontation, with Moore listed as a witness. Wuornos would later reflect deeply on her relationship with Moore, describing it as love beyond imaginable, a sentiment she held on to until her final days on death row, even expressing love for Moore before her execution. Within a single year, Aileen Wuornos committed 7 murders, targeting male motorists aged 40 to 65. Her first victim was Richard Charles Mallory, a 51-year-old electronics store owner from Clearwater. On November 30, 1989, Wuornos claimed Mallory had brutally beaten, raped, and sodomized her after driving her to a remote area. She asserted that she killed him in self-defense. It was later revealed that Mallory had a prior conviction for attempted rape in Maryland, lending some complexity to her claim. Mallory's abandoned vehicle was discovered by a Volusia County deputy 2 days after the murder, and his body was found on December 13th, miles away in a wooded area. He had been shot multiple times, with 2 bullets to the left lung, proving fatal. David Andrew Spears, a 47-year-old construction worker from Winter Garden, was declared missing on May 19, 1990. On June 1st, his naked body was discovered along US 19 in Citrus County. He had been shot 6 times with a .22 caliber pistol. The next known victim was 40-year-old Charles Edmund Carskadden, a part-time rodeo worker. He was murdered on May 31, 1990, and his body was found on June 6 in Pasco County, wrapped in an electric blanket and in an advanced state of decomposition. He had been shot 9 times with a .22 caliber weapon. Witnesses later reported seeing Wuornos driving Carskadden's car, and she was found to have pawned a gun belonging to him. Peter Abraham Seams, a 65-year-old retired merchant seaman, vanished in June 1990 while en route from Jupiter, Florida, to Arkansas. On July 4th, his vehicle was found abandoned in Orange Springs, Florida. Witnesses reported seeing both Tyria Moore and Wuornos leaving the car, and authorities discovered Wuornos' handprint on the interior door handle. Despite an extensive search, Seams's body was never recovered. Troy Eugene Burris, a 50-year-old sausage salesman from Ocala, Florida, was reported missing on July 31, 1990. His body was discovered on August 4th, in a wooded area off State Road 19 in Marion County, with 2 gunshot wounds. Charles Richard Dick Humphreys, age 56, was a retired U.S. Air Force major, a former child abuse investigator, and a former chief of police. He was murdered on September 11, 1990, and his body was found the next day in Marion County. Humphreys was fully clothed, with 7 gunshot wounds to his head and torso. His car was later discovered in Suwannee County. The final known victim was Walter Gino Antonio, a 61-year-old trucker, security guard, and reserve police officer. His nearly naked body was found on November 19, 1990, near a logging road in Dixie County. He had been shot 4 times. 5 days later, his car was found in Brevard County. These murders left a trail of evidence that ultimately linked back to Wuornos, including eyewitness accounts, physical evidence, and connections to the victims' vehicles. On July 4, 1990, Aileen Wuornos and her partner, Tyria Moore, abandoned Peter Seams's car following an accident. A witness named Rhonda Bailey saw the incident and provided police with descriptions of both women, leading to a publicized effort to identify them. In addition, investigators discovered some of the victim's personal items in local pawn shops. Wuornos's fingerprint, found on a pawn shop receipt, matched the print left on Seam's car. This crucial match was possible due to Wuornos's criminal record in Florida, which placed her fingerprints in a database. On January 9, 1991, Wuornos was arrested at the Last Resort, a biker bar in Volusia County, under a warrant issued in the name of Lori Grody. The following day, police located Tyria Moore in Pittston, Pennsylvania. Moore agreed to cooperate with authorities in exchange for immunity, consenting to aid in securing a confession from Wuornos. She returned to Florida under police supervision and stayed in a motel where she made multiple phone calls to Wuornos, urging her to help clear her name. After 3 days, on January 16, 1991, Wuornos confessed to the murders, stating that each killing was an act of self-defense, as the men had attempted to rape her. In an unusual twist, in November 1991, Wuornos was adopted by Arlene Prahl, a 44-year-old woman who felt a connection to Wuornos after seeing her photo in the newspaper, despite having no prior relationship with her. On January 14, 1992, Aileen Wuornos went to trial for the murder of Richard Charles Mallory. In a significant legal maneuver, the prosecution was permitted to introduce evidence of Wuornos's other crimes under Florida's Williams Rule, establishing a pattern of her violent behavior. On January 27th, with testimony from her former partner Tyria Moore, Wuornos was convicted of Mallory's murder. At her sentencing, defense psychiatrists testified to her mental instability, diagnosing her with borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. Just 4 days later, she was sentenced to death. Defense team attempted to introduce evidence that Mallory had a prior conviction for attempted rape in Maryland and had served time in a maximum security facility with specialized treatment for sexual offenders. These records, covering years of treatment from 1958 to 1962, indicated Mallory exhibited strong sociopathic trends. However, the judge denied this evidence from being presented in court and rejected Wuornos' request for a retrial. On March 31, 1992, Wuornos pleaded no contest to the murders of Charles Richard Humphreys, Troy Eugene Burris, and David Andrew Spears, expressing a desire to get right with God. She told the court that while Mallory had violently raped her, the other men had not, but only began to start to. On May 15, 1992, she was sentenced to 3 additional death sentences. In June, Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murder of Charles Edmund Carskadden, resulting in a 5th death sentence in November. In February 1993, she admitted to the murder of Walter Geno Antonio and received her 6th death sentence. No charges were filed for the murder of Peter Abraham Seams, as his body was never found. In total, Wuornos received 6 death sentences. Aileen Wuornos offered multiple conflicting accounts regarding her motivation for the killings. Initially, she claimed that each of the 7 men had either raped or attempted to rape her while she was working as a prostitute, framing the murders as acts of self-defense. Later, however, she changed her story, stating that the murders were driven by robbery and her desire to eliminate any witnesses. In a telling moment during an interview with filmmaker Nick Broomfield, Wuornos, believing the cameras were off, confided that her initial self-defense claim was indeed the truth. She admitted that she couldn't bear the prolonged isolation and conditions on death row, where she had already spent a decade, and that she ultimately wanted her sentence to be carried out to end her suffering. Aileen Wuornos was held on death row at the Broward Correctional Institution before being transferred to Florida State Prison for her execution. Her appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court was denied in 1996. In a 2001 petition to the Florida Supreme Court, she expressed her intention to dismiss her legal counsel and drop all pending appeals. She candidly stated, "I killed those men. I'd do it again too. I'm competent, sane, and I'm trying to tell the truth. I seriously hate human life," and would kill again. Although her attorneys argued she was not mentally competent to make such a request, a court-appointed panel of psychiatrists concurred with her mental competence. In 2002, Wuornos began accusing prison staff of tampering with her food and claimed they intended to drive her to suicide before her execution. She complained about mistreatment, including harsh strip searches and unsanitary conditions. Her attorney noted that Wuornos sought humane treatment leading up to her execution. In the weeks before her death, Wuornos gave interviews to documentarian Nick Broomfield, discussing her views on spirituality and alleging psychological torment at BCI. She accused prison officials of trying to make her appear insane and expressed her anger toward society, stating, "A raped woman got executed and was used for books and movies and shit." Her final on-camera words were a bitter acknowledgement of society's role in her fate. "Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass." Don Botkins, a childhood friend, later clarified that Wuornos' anger was directed at society and the media, not at Broomfield personally. Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection on October 9, 2002. In an unusual choice, she declined a last meal, which could have included anything under $20, opting instead for just a cup of coffee. Her final words were cryptic. "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all. I'll be back. I'll be back." Wuornos was pronounced dead at 9:47 a.m. EDT. Notably, she was the second woman executed in Florida and the 10th in the United States since the 1976 Supreme Court decision that reinstated capital punishment.